Hello, I'm Will. I'm a real werewolf, and I'm giving stories about my life and what's happened at certain points. This is quite a recent thing that I think I'm in a bit of trouble with. I'll be talking about me being now taken down by the police. I'm now in custody. So this is not good. But I'll keep trying to send messages out and say what's happening and stuff. So I'll tell you what happened. As I say, I'm a real werewolf. There's www.werewolf.host, and there's plenty of other videos on this YouTube channel now. If you would like to subscribe and like and all those kind of things, that would be great if you don't mind. I've just been I've just been captured by the police, and I'm going to tell you the story of how that happened. I don't know if it made the media, but yeah, it's just a pain in the ass. So I'd been doing like my artwork using a young family in the flats. I was doing the most beautiful mural on the wall of an apartment. It really was a masterpiece. Sadly, I wasn't really paying attention because I wasn't caring too much, and one of the brats had got out the door unbeknownst to me. He was covered in blood and snot and was slightly upset at being courted by his parents. It was my fault, and that I'd got distracted by my work that he had escaped. But I'd created one of the most beautiful pieces on that apartment wall, and did not really care about his absence. The work was really Jackson Pollock-esque, big, bold, and of course, in all the bloody shades of red a body can contain. Arterial sprays accented the magnolia of the walls. It was a little more technical than like using a spray painting can, but it gave a very pleasing effect. If you use a sharp blade in a carotid artery, you can get some really nice sort of lines, and you start with the art of controlling a fighting muling paintbrush. You have to get them to the point of easy compliance. This normally takes some level of beating to stupefy them or terror to break them. You cannot have them being too vocal or movie about it, really. This is a serious thing to do, and you have to be very careful at this point, because if you hit it too hard, it dies and then it's useless. It is so fucking difficult using a live paintbrush that moves of its own volition, and they tend to be sizable as well, and that does not help. Using humans for art, you also have a limited time to do your allotted work. I've learned to work backwards with the details. Fine pinpricks to the arteries give you finely detailed spray with which you do the outlines and fine work. Even though the body's struggling at the early stage, it's tougher to control because they tend to be adrenaline pumped and wiggly. Then as you cut more deep, they bleed longer and the blood leaves the body slower and it has less power. The blood leaves the system so quickly you have to work fast, but the white noise of the crying and screaming helps me focus on the design at this stage as they orally give away their lives for art. This one had been an improvised piece, but it looked delicious. Literally delicious. True ruination in red. Those shadows on the wall would teach the ignorant, if seen for the truth that they are. Their bullet holes would now show the beauty can be ruined, but we'll get into that in a bit more detail. Bullet holes weren't from me. Well, we return to the issue at hand, the lack of care shown. One of the little shits had got out to make others aware of the plight in the building. I saw him go, but to be honest, I did not care. My work was much more important to finish, and I did not need another bottle of blood, especially such a little one. It's not really worth opening the pot. I noticed him go, but carried on with my work. I held the youngest child by his ankles, dangling, wiggling and crying. I tried to explain to him the beauty of what he was going to be part of, but he just wouldn't relax. The selfish shit would just not. So it was with utmost satisfaction that I dashed its head against the wall to make an accented line across the piece. It took several hard swipes to get the effect that I wished for, but once the kid was limp and dead and the work was complete, I drooped the husk of what was once life and raised my hands to my head. It was pure bliss. You will never see it, but the tears it created and the emotions engendered in me were phenomenal. The ichor on my hands added to the heady high, and I sucked my fingers clean. I can't describe it. Now the issue started to rise from me from my lack of care. This, combined with my over-appreciation of my art, meant that I had not noticed the outside world. There were sirens and the whopping sounds of blades of the helicopter in the air. They had arrived in mass, and I only noticed the amplified voice after I relaxed to comprehend my work. It was so fucking irritating. Come out and give up. It got so fucking annoying after a while that I walked to the window and opened it to ask them to quiet down. Didn't they realise I needed time to actually, take in and love my work? So I tried to tell them, hey, can you guys please give me a few minutes? I promise I'll be right down. I just want a few minutes. Then I flinched in instinct. It was just the right thing to do. The window pane where my head had been downright exploded, sending plaster and concrete as shrapnel flying. I mean, that could have killed me if it hit me in the head. I was only asking for a few minutes. These people were so rude. These people have no consideration for my health at times. I was so fucking angry. I went out the window, hey, to give them a healthy rebuke and a piece of my mind. I was trying to tell them what I felt about the lack of decency and what they'd just done. I mean, no fucking warning, and that they were actually going to fucking shoot me. Again, my preternatural senses told me not to be in the fucking view, so I leapt to the floor as the aperture where the window once was rattled into tiny pieces by automatic gunfire. I was now in the humiliating position of lying prostrate on the floor, covered in bits of plaster, metal, glass, and not feeling the fun, to be honest. I mean, it was beginning to get somewhat perturbed about this whole thing. As the gunfire subsided, I looked up. And then it was a realisation. God, you fucking cunts. They'd wrecked my work. Bullet holes scarred that wall. It was broken and it was ruined. In that moment, I was destroyed. My art, did they not realise that it was the only thing of any value in anybody's life these days? It was an utter fucking of a social catastrophe. The world was going to miss out on the blood and beauty. Or there was its somewhat cliched title, The Blood and the Beauty. But wait, somehow it was, now looking at it, that it was now fucking perfect, actually. I mean, if the bullet holes had caused the ruination of my piece, no, they'd actually added to the chaos of the piece, I would have to rethink that. I mean, it was a significant change of heart for me because it was, in fact, the ruination of a piece of art. That was the ruination of life, which in itself was art. So now I had to rename it Blood, Beauty and Bullets. The cliche of the name combined with the alliteration of words was such a wonderful kitschy contrast to the consummate carnage created on the canvas. I'd ruined a little family and made my art show that ruining. Then the art had been further ruined by the damage done by the blast from the guns. It was so much better. There was just enough time to enjoy it. It was beautiful, truly beautiful, and the emotion caught in my throat. I mean, you monkeys probably could never draw from its significance. How could you ruin something that was already ruined? I mean, that does not make sense. The fantastic thing was now I had the opportunity to push the piece further. With how the piece had evolved, I'd been inspired to take a further step with it. The situation had now transpired outside, which meant I'd been given the crafting gifts I needed to explore ruination further. The new supply of crafting gifts was outside, lives and souls to further ruin. The ruin of the ruinings of the ruins. Wow, if I were a heavy metal musician, that would be my album title. So I had to sit and create a new plan, or it could be a disaster if the plan went wrong. Fen, my posit, smiled at me in his wolfy way. If you don't know what a posit is, then go and look at How to Become a Werewolf interview. Okay, and that tells you about my werewolf soul. It's a separate entity. It's like a ghost that follows me around in a wolf shape. It can talk to me telepathically. Only werewolves can see them. And when I want to become a werewolf or a wolf, he can join me, and we can become those things as one being. So I started talking to Fen, my posit, my werewolf soul, and he sent me his opinion. Nah, fuck it, let's do the usual plan, Will. Let's wing it and see what the fuck happens. This was his usual unsolid advice. I would now get to work in front of a huge media presence. I knew that already the eyes of the world would be on this block of flats at this moment. Maybe with Big Fen's permission, my posit, I could bring out the wolf to play on TV. It would be fun to see how this went. And after all, I'd been doing these interviews and stuff, so would it actually matter if my transformation came out live on telly? How on earth were they going to cover this shit up now? Which they always managed to seem to do, which blew my mind. Fen, I asked my posit. Uh-huh. Can we play out, please, I asked. Fen, in reply, shrugged his wolfy huge shoulders. It's really cool watching a wolf shrug. I'm sure you're finding it difficult to imagine, I suppose, but it's great to actually see. Okay. Well, but let's not do anything too stupid, huh? Came his response in my head. The sirens were screaming, the helicopters were making that thudding sound as their blades cut the chilled evening air. I lifted myself to a sprinter stance, and in my head I did a countdown from 3. 1, 2... I exploded towards and then through the window, leapt and fell. Fen was not ready for my early departure, and all I could hear in my head was his complaints at the prank, how it really was not funny. He was lying though, because it was fucking hilarious. As I cleared the window and smelt the clean fresh air after the erotic bloody smells of the room, I suddenly had a moment of consideration and badly timed clarity. Well, what I had thought seemed like a good idea at the time, I suddenly realised was not an idea at all, it was just a stupid happening. I started the 3-story drop, screaming and yelling. There was a lot of impotent rage and anger in me as the bullets flew past me and through me. I had not really considered the possibility that a small army would have arrived by the time I was ready to jump. As I fell, I brought into play one of my kind of superish powers. Seems that I can sort of slow time in my head. Time really can't slow, but time is relative, right? So I can relate to it strangely. I don't get it either, but all I can say is that I noticed a lot of little red laser dots on my body as I fell. You've watched the films and played Call of Duty, so you know that these laser sights used to zero in by snipers. Now, thanks to my regenerative skills and fucking toughness, I can take a shot of 6. I mean, I'm pretty fucking hard to kill, but this was ridiculous. Ridiculous. I was covered in little laser dots. I mean, it lit me up like a red glowy thing by hundreds of dots. I looked like a beacon of hope, a beacon that would literally be torn apart into tiny parts when all those fuckers fired. I would be a cloud of bloody red pulp before I hit the floor. Now, rule 1 of a werewolf is not to care, but in this case I needed to care about the fact I wanted to survive this moment. So remember, rule 1, we don't care about anything except ourselves at times. Ah, shit, I heard from the free-falling wolf posit next to me. You're fucked. He was falling 4 paws upwards and seemingly lying on a back on like an invisible couch and laughing me in his head. At first I was a little annoyed by this, then I realised how funny that all this had become. I looked at him and laughed too. Yeah, this was going to be fun. I had no idea on earth how it was going to end, or if it was going to end well. But yet again, I needed to survive this stupid situation to see how this was going to turn out. I prepared myself for a superhero landing. I love a good superhero landing. I mean, I can shatter concrete when I land properly and charge into the maelstrom of gunfire to commit carnage. But I changed my mind on the way down. Before landing, I quickly placed my hands behind my head and landed on my knees. Silence fell on the mortals. The sirens and the helicopters kept up their blaring, blatting noise in the background, but the human noise faded away. Fen now padded up and sat next to me. Side by side, we faced a lot of weapons, cameras, and a lot of humans. Well, I do not think that this is going to go well, but let's see. Fenrir turned his head to mine, and our eyes met. He sighed and then laughed. I looked at the floor and laughed too. I could feel the fear that this caused in those surrounding me. Just this simple giggle at the most inappropriate of moments was probably seen as being somewhat out of character. Well, I shouted at the crowd before me. Well, is no one going to come and arrest me? I've been a bad, bad boy and need to be punished. Come and get me. I mean, I've not got all the fucking time in the world. Fen sniggered, which made me giggle a lot. I think that they might have thought I was taking the piss a little. Lay down your weapons, came an amplified, authoritative voice over one of those Coney amplifier things that you see in the movies. I raised my hands and dramatically tossed my Swiss Army knife towards the crowd of police people who threw themselves to the ground as it landed. It was fucking hilarious the way that they all leapt in different directions as the little knife, with its built-in toothpick and strange hooky thing that no one knows the use for, hit the ground that Fen and I had just laughingly, literally landed on. This is silly, said Maposit, but it looks like it will end up being a lot of fun. After getting myself back under control from the mirth, I started to feel the ADHD kick in. I don't think I have any weapons now, I shouted. I do have really sore knees though, so can we hurry up, please? The wolf next to me turned to me and gave me a quizzical look. What the fuck are you doing? Are you going to let these two take you down? I am, yeah, I replied. What the fuck? Is this going to be fun? I'm not sure, to be honest, Fen. Do you see these little red dots all over me? No. Okay, but there's lots of little red dots all over me. Well, each one of those is linked to one of those high-caliber sniper rifles. That is an issue if we come out to play, I told him. We may end up a simple cloud of blood and snot if those things start to pop off on us. So we have to take this a wee bit carefully, I'm afraid, my friend. Drop all your weapons, came that annoying amplified voice again. I have no fucking weapons, you fucking morons. I gave up that toothpick. Where do you think I have all these weapons that you're keeping asking me about? It would be absurd for me to attack a group of machine guns with a Swiss Army knife, would it not? At this point, my lovely readers and my lovely listeners, I hope the more educated of you are drawing all these links back to your great philosophers. It would hurt if I thought that you were all too stupid to realise the work put in here. Eventually, the social narrated forces for good approached with heavy weapons trained on me and full in fear. It took one man to step up and take me down, handcuffing me. Once the stupidest man had made his move to bind me, they all piled in and buried me in bodies. And I'll continue with these stories as I get time. I might not be out for June the 9th. That's when I'm supposed to be doing the transformation. But we'll see. Okay, thanks for listening. And please like and subscribe. And whatever you do, don't let the werewolves bite.